This is kind of our agenda. We'll be going over program status update, case rate development data, case rate billing guidance, and a Q&A. And we can jump right in. So I think the biggest thing that I think a lot of people have heard is we've revised the launch date to January 1st, 2025. So the launch date had initially been planned for September 1, is upcoming December 1st, 24. After a lot of engagement with many of you and many other maternal health care providers, there was a lot of really important questions that have been asked, several things that we are taking back and we are still reviewing, and that we'll plan on answering as we move forward. So just to say, we appreciate all the feedback. We anticipate getting additional questions today. Some we'll be able to answer on the spot, some we may need to take back. But we appreciate the opportunity to engage with you. We see this as a year-long partnership that will be ongoing in nature. And so it's important that all of you are able to weigh in and that we are able to provide feedback and guidance as we launch this program and hopefully make it successful even in its infancy. So look forward to the dialogue today and to future dialogue going forward. We have been, just to also note, we have been scheduling individual provider meetings, and we are happy to continue to do that as needed. Next slide. So things that we're working on, things that we've already done, just a quick highlight. So in terms of on the left-hand side, you'll see that recently accomplished, so there's been actuarial modeling and program testing, draft case rates have gone out, historic performance reports as well, and some provider resources, including some video guides and FAQs. So those you have, or your offices, provider offices have received, and some of the things like the video guides and FAQs are on the website. Current priorities, things we're working on are consideration of any program refinements. So again, some of the feedback we've heard, just to make some slight modifications to it, some of that you'll hear today, as well as more detailed billing guidance and updated FAQ. There'll be quality measure reference guide as well for the quality measure program, and then finalizing the CMS state plan amendment approval with our CMS partners. Upcoming will be provider bulletin and payment policies and processes, 8 final performance year case rates. So those are upcoming, and then performance year provider reports. Again, the link here at the bottom, again, takes you to the DSS website. Definitely make sure to look there. And again, we have a YouTube channel as well. That CTDSS YouTube channel will have videos from today, as well as historical ones that go back years. Next slide. I think we'll pass it over to Tiffany to walk us through this next set, and we'll be looking out for Q&A in the chat.
Great, thanks, Brad. So like Brad mentioned, DSS performed actuarial modeling and program testing, which is what we call the dry run. And as part of that, we were able to provide some draft case rates. We received a couple more questions about case rates and wanted to be responsive to those questions. So DSS has recently, as of just last week, provided a bit more data to help providers better understand how are these rates developed, and to also be able to understand what the potential revenue impact is under this new payment model. So I'll go ahead and walk us through the information that was provided on the next slide. Before I do, I just wanted to call out this data is following the same kind of data that was provided back in March. It's based on deliveries that were incurred during the dry run period from 10/1/2021 to 9/30/2022. Before go live, DSS does plan to refresh the case rates with the more recent claims data set. I believe the tentative plan for that data set period to be 1 year after the dry run period. So it'll be 10/1/2022 to 9/30/2023. So diving into the data that was provided just a little bit more, I'll walk us through the table and the columns. The first one is attributed episodes. This is going to be the number of episodes that the accountable provider practice is responsible for in the historic period. Then we have first trimester fee-for-service payments. Like the name suggests, this is the total amount of payment for services that are provided in the first trimester. These services are not included in the case rate, and they are therefore paid for by fee-for-service payments. Then when we get into how the case rate was developed, to develop the case rate, DSS is first going to look at the claims experience from the second trimester, the third trimester, the delivery if it's performed by the accountable provider, and also the postpartum periods. DSS is specifically looking at the cost of services that are included in the case rate, and services included in the case rate can be found on the code list that's posted on the DSS website. So once we aggregate those total costs, we'll come to the number here in this column. Next, DSS is also going to look at the average number of payments that are made per case. So this is the number of payments historically and on average based on your claims history that your practice would have received the case rate payment in the historic period. And then finally, to get your draft case rate, this is going to be your monthly provider-specific payment for services provided in the second and third trimester, also covering delivery and postpartum period. DSS is going to essentially divide the total cost for services provided in the case rate period by the number of months that your practice would be accountable and eligible to receive the case rate payment. I will note what you'll see here in the draft data. Typically, it's a number under 9, but practices can start to trigger the case rate payment, which we'll discuss on the next page, as early as the second trimester. And if you were to do so during that time, the practice would be eligible for around 9 months of payment for the case rate. So that represents an opportunity to potentially earn additional revenue. And as a reminder, we also just wanted to provide a little bit more information around how to trigger the case rate payment to make sure folks are getting paid appropriately under the program and new payment model. So like mentioned, beginning in the second trimester, accountable providers can start to receive the case rate payment by meeting the following criteria. So the first one happens automatically if your practice is going to be a part of this program. The practice needs to perform 30 or more deliveries per year. Next, what's going to happen is going to be dependent on the practice submitting a claim that one contains a trigger diagnosis code. Those codes are listed on the DSS website. 2 also has an E&M code based on what's listed on this slide. And then 3 includes a qualifying place of service location. So that's going to be 11 for office visits, 19 off-campus outpatient hospital, and 22 on-campus outpatient hospital. I will just call out, we received some questions about the place of service at the last provider forum. So wanted to share that this was an update that DSS has made after careful analysis and consideration. The goal of updating the place of service location criteria was really to make sure that DSS could appropriately capture when attribution changes were happening. So that's the reason for that update. And then the last criteria to make sure the case rate can be triggered is just making sure that the claim is billed with a qualifying maternity specialty type, which is listed here. In addition, some of the other questions that we've received from our individual practice meetings relate to global billing. DSS does recognize that for practices who do not currently bill meeting the trigger event criteria, this would represent a change in billing practice. And so current guidance at the moment is that DSS is recommending for practices to bill to meet the trigger event criteria when possible. This would help ensure that your practice is able to maintain episode attribution in case your patient is going to different practices for care. We are planning to put out additional guidance related to global code billing. We've specifically heard some questions around how to bill for members who have Medicaid as the secondary insurance payer. So those details and additional guidance is forthcoming. And we'll just also highlight part of the reason for moving away from global code billing is because that's a practice that's it's a retrospective billing practice that's contingent on meeting different fee-for-service requirements. The goal of this payment model is to move towards a prospective payment. And really, this is through the case rate payment. DSS is hoping One, the case rate payment provides a little bit more upfront capital spread out over the second through postpartum period. And also that it provides additional flexibility for practices in the care that they're able to provide and with additional care coordination services. So one last slide to round things out before we get into questions. Like Brad mentioned, in the next couple weeks, you can expect more information to be coming out from DSS. That's going to include updated FAQs. We're hoping to provide some billing examples so you can see what that would look like within the billing department, and then additional information related to the billing and payment processes are also forthcoming. And again, because the goal of this program is to really be responsive to the requests and questions that are coming up with providers, we want to make sure we're providing information that is helpful to you guys. And so we'll continue to hold additional provider forums to answer questions that come up. So with that, we can move on to questions. You're welcome to unmute yourself and raise your hand if you want to jump in. You can also use the chat function, which is listed under the More button.
Got a note that looks like the Q&A might be, oh, there it is. It looks like Q&A is up now, I think. Just confirming. Getting a couple direct messages. It's helpful if you're able to post it in the Q&A. Are folks able to see the Q&A function? Just want to make sure you can post anonymously as well, just so you know. We're happy to get questions in any way you prefer. It's just helpful for tracking purposes. It just makes it easier so we make sure we get all the questions in. Let's see. It sounds like the host has turned off. Oh, Kim just acknowledged. Okay, it looks like it's up now.
One question came in. Are FQHCs included in this program?
Great. You know, this came up yesterday. Happy to start off. So as of now, no. This actually came up last year, and we did some extensive stakeholdering with a large number of the FQACs, and we got I would say a mixed reaction in terms of interest. Some FQACs do a lot more maternal health services than others, and just to give you a little bit of understanding as to why doesn't DSS just turn this on for FQACs, it actually is quite an extensive process to go through to build this system because of how we currently pay FQACs, which is quite different than we pay other maternal health providers. And so
Does anyone else
Did
have
Did Brad go on mute? Brad, hang on one sec. For some reason,
I see he's not unmuted, but we lost your audio for whatever reason. Can't hear anything.
that's strange.
how about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back.
I'm not sure what happened. I could hear all of you and see it. So deep apologies, everybody.
Accidentally muted him.
Tiffany, would you lost me for a second?
You were
Yeah,
getting
yeah,
into, I believe, like just some of the difficulties with operationalizing
Yeah.
participation.
So just there are a lot of challenges. It is a pretty large lift for the percent of the population that's covered. However, we recognize the importance that FQHCs play for all of our members, especially those most historically marginalized. And so this is an ongoing interest for us. However, it's not going to be live for year one. And we need to do some extensive discussions about what's realistic and what those resources will be in terms of actually activating it. So anything else, Tiffany, want to add?
No, I think you covered it. Our next question in the Q&A is, will OBP for P be continued?
So we are planning on continuing it for the providers who are not eligible for the, do not qualify for the bundle. So it'll be a much more scaled back, smaller version of OBP for P, but we are planning on, as of now, continuing.
Another question I received, how will maternity bundle type work for practices with MDs, certified nurse midwives, and women's health nurse practitioners who all participate in the OB care for the patient panel?
I don't know if I caught that completely. Tiffany, do you mind repeating that one more time?
Yeah, I'll repeat it one more time. How will maternity bundle type work for practices with MDs, certified nurse midwives, and women's health nurse practitioners who all participate in the OB care of the patient panel? I think this is asking for if a practice has multiple specialty types.
That definitely is incorporated into how this is set up. So I'm happy to take a first stab and pass it to Charles or Grace as well for follow-up. But essentially, all of the types mentioned, so MDs, DOs, certified nurse midwives, nurse practitioners that are doing, for example, FNPs that are providing maternal health care underneath the TIN, that is incorporated underneath the case rate that is included for those providers are included as eligible providers. And so this is operationalized at the TIN level, so the tax ID number level. And so this actually is built to work in this type of environment where there are multiple types of providers providing services. The case rate is set based on historical utilization patterns, which can allow Charles and Grace to elaborate on a little bit further if helpful. But so it does include those provider types if they're providing the included services, which are a wide number. And just so you're aware, those services can be found on our website. There's information located there in terms of all the services, which are quite extensive in terms of what's covered and what types of services are pulled into the case rate or included underneath it. So let me pause. Charles, Grace, anything you want to clarify or say anything further?
No, Dr. Richards, I think that really covers it. It's just basically the case rule will cover the claims billed by the attributed accountable providers for the services list on the case rate code list, and all the provider type just mentioned in the question are all covered under the case rate. But obviously, if those services happen or provided by the provider not attributed, then those will still be reimbursed fee for service. But those are all the provider type or provider specialty that could potentially be covered by case rate.
Great. And I think I had an additional question I don't think made it in. It was how many lactation visits are covered in the bundle. So maybe just an opportunity to clarify a few things. So in terms of lactation services, so there's the historical case rate. So if a MD, DO, certified nurse midwife providing maternal health care, it provides lactation support services, that's included under the existing case rate framework, especially as long as they're provided under an existing like even E&M code, and the case rate has been, again, activated, as Grace said. As long as someone's activated the case rate, we expect those providers to be providing those services as needed. There is an additional $7 PMPM that's provided for enhanced lactation support services. Providers will need to determine the level of support that members require as part of that funding, and then allocate resources as appropriate into the member's need. So there's not a set number of specific visits that are included. Separately, there is a add-on doula rate that is opt-out for providers. So it's an additional $14 PMPM for doula services that can be provided directly to practices. That is built around a specific utilization pattern of 4 outpatient doula visits, as well as 1 presence at the delivery or birth. And so it has a specific structure in terms of the doula piece. So I just wanted to call that out because there also will be a fee-for-service doula option as well. So there'll be an option for doulas to enroll directly. Now, both of those services, so doula wouldn't be necessarily could not provide services underneath both of them to the same member. For example, if you're a doula working with a practice, it wouldn't also be that's getting funding for doula services. So let's say I'm the certified nurse midwife. I am receiving the $14 PMPM for doula services. I contract with a doula to work with me. That doula who's working with my member wouldn't not then bill a fee for service payment. We are anticipating launching the fee-for-service portion of dual Medicaid coverage also hopefully on January 1. That is our plan as of now. Let me pause. That may have been a bit confusing. I went into a lot of detail there from that question. So Tiffany, Charles, or Grace, any clarification or things you want to call out that I just said or didn't say?
No, I think that's 100% right on how it's handled in the add-on payment.
Any other questions? Welcome. Any comments, questions folks have? Again, we're definitely looking to hear from different provider practices, people in the practice about questions they have or clarifications they need. If we have none, then we'll wrap up a bit early. And certainly know everyone appreciates having the time back. I think I'll just reiterate one, that again, the launch date has been moved to January 1. We're looking to engage further with providers and practices. So please do reach out to us if you have specific questions or would like to have a conversation with us. We have been doing that already with a number of providers and practices. We're looking to continue to engage with that in various ways, whether directly with the provider engagement team that Kim helps oversee, or directly with the more technical team in terms of how case rates are developed, et cetera. We look forward to that engagement and we welcome it. We know this is again, a marathon and not a sprint in terms of the maternity bundle. We see hopefully this being a win-win over time, being good for our members, helping drive down some of those historical disparities that we continue to see. A win for providers. There's an additional several $1 million that are anticipated to go out to providers through this program. And additionally, a win for the state, because we will be able to reinforce and strengthen maternal health care, as well as decrease the disparities that have been persisting for years. We understand those will be difficult and will take time to achieve. But we do see this as an ongoing partnership and conversation. And we truly tried to build this model to be innovative and novel and hopefully address the ongoing disparities that we've seen, even having a OBPPV program in place. So we look forward to that. We know even after we launch, we'll need to have continued engagement and conversations, and we will have structured systems in place so that can occur. So thanks, everybody. Let me see if any team colleagues, Bill, anyone else would like to say anything else before we wrap up.
No, well said.
All right.
Well
Thanks,
said. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Talk to everyone soon. And sorry for the technical glitch there with me going on mute there, but appreciate it. All right. Talk soon, everybody.